Hello, everyone, and welcome to another talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your temporary host, Mushtaq Ali. Noor is still visiting with family on the other side of the continent, and hopefully we will have her back next week. Fingers crossed for that. Until then, you have to put up with me. So let's get the announcements out of the way fast so we can dive into this topic. This is an exciting topic for me. Um, We would be incredibly grateful if you liked this video. And for all of you who have been liking our videos, thank you very much. We remember you to God. For all of you who hate our videos, we remember you to God as well, but in different ways. Um, oh yeah, leave a comment. We've had some great comments. We've had some weird comments. We've had some fun comments. So think about leaving a comment. And leave a comment, subscribe. We have a special this week only. You can subscribe to this very YouTube channel for free. All you have to do is reach down there and click that subscribe button, and there you are. No charge. So there's all of that. And I should probably say, donate money. If you check behind your couch cushions, and in your winter coat, as you're getting it out, because you got to get out your winter coat, and you find a little spare change in there, feel free to send it along to the Nine-Sided Circle. We will put it to good use. And I promise you, we will not be buying any jets or any fancy cars, maybe a tricycle. But that's it. Um, so there we have it. Tonight's topic is communication. And I'm specifically looking at Mr. Gurdjieff's thoughts on communication as a good starter here, which may seem weird because if anybody has read his books or any of his writings, um, his communication methods were sometimes obtuse, but he had some very, very good ideas as well. And some that started out good and maybe turned bad after his passing. So, according to Mr. Gurdjieff, and you can find this in various of his books, he was of the opinion that ordinary language can't carry exact meaning. Words are vague, subjective, and shift across the speaker's associations. We think we understand, but mostly exchange practical data and talk past one another. Um, for real study, he said an exact language was required. I don't know that he ever developed that, or if he did, um, it contained words that we most normal people can't even pronounce. And his next principle was understanding does not, or knowledge does not equal understanding. That's an important one. Knowledge does not equal understanding. Think about what that might mean. Knowledge is 2 plus 2 equals 4. What would understanding be? Can you find the difference between those two?
Perhaps understanding the general principle of addition.
Yeah, understanding can be the general principle of addition, and it can be uh, what can you do with 2 plus 2 equals 4? Extrapolate from that. Uh, yes, application of knowledge can definitely be understanding. And this can be important. If you look in medical texts, and they have all of these beautiful medical illustrations um, that show you everything in the body, and you can see it all very, very clearly. You have some knowledge. But until you actually look inside the body, you don't really understand what's going on. Just a thought. Oh, somebody else coming in. Chris. So, to have understanding, according to Mr. G, it demands three-centered participation. Real understanding appears only when thought, feeling, and sensation are engaged. So communication must be approached with all three centers, not just the head. Chris, you made it. Is Superior flooding or are you guys okay?
No, we good. Yeah, thank you for your message, Mushtaq. Yeah, we good.
Good. So think about that for a second. In order to understand something, you can't just think it. You have to engage all three centers. So, who here has ever had somebody try to communicate with them just with the heart center? Nothing else. Anyone? Bueller? How about, yeah, RM says maybe her child when she was young? Yeah. Sometimes when they're young enough, they communicate just with the moving center.
I've got
Think
some,
that, go ahead.
I was going to say that I've got a few friends, just really two or three, who like to communicate on Facebook about Gaza, and they're so emotionally wrapped up in it that it seems to be impossible for them to view it from any other perspective.
Yeah, and that's a good example because Gaza is a very emotional topic. And uh, the people who are on the other side of that would like them to stay emotional. Now, you also have people who communicate just with the head center. And so my question to you would be, have you ever experienced communication that involves all three centers, both in you and in the person communicating with you? And if you have, what would that be like?
Yeah, I think I can clearly say that I've had people communicate using emotion and intellect, but I don't know how to characterize adding anything physical to that.
Yeah, we will get in with that, get into that. Uh, somebody says the nine-sided talks live. God willing. James, talk to us.
Well, I think I've had cases where someone communicates with I wouldn't call it force, it's not aggressive, but I'll just say presence. They say something and they seem to say it with all of themselves. There is an
Yeah,
immense congruence and you feel it, know it, even though it's not necessarily dramatic or loud or overbearing. that just carries more
Yeah, you use the
weight.
magic word with that, which is congruence.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, when someone is completely aligned with themselves and aligned with their message, it is powerful. And Anissa says, it feels definitely more real when those talks happen. Yes. Even if you start with just one of you being in that state of congruence, you will have a tendency to draw the other person into a state of congruence as well. It's like magic. Gurdjieff said, read, listen, and speak with all three centers. And he had a bunch of exercises about how to do that, which we don't need to go into right now. Um, but he was big on his students developing and cultivating three-center exchange rather than intellectual chatter. And he talks about two modes of mentation, by words and by forms. Words are relative and easily misunderstood. Mentation by form is, um, it, it's a lousy name for it, but he's talking about direct perception and seeing and observing the nonverbal messages, movement, posture, presence, breath, all of these things that are part of the language of the work. And that is a science unto itself. Can forms be diagram? Um, I'm not sure how to answer that question. You can mind map ideas, but that doesn't um, give you the presence of the person. Right now, we are, even though this is over a camera, when we're actually talking with each other, uh, if Brian and I are having a conversation right here on the old Zoom, I will see him. I will be able to pick up a lot of his movements. I will be able to experience how he's breathing, all of this kind of stuff. And that's part of the form. And there's a lot of meaning to that. Most of the time we don't understand it, but it is quite learnable. And this is one of the things I intend when we have our next retreat to start teaching. The old Sufi practices of how to experience a person from the silence outward rather than from the noise inward, which is kind of fun. So one of the things that G was absolutely adamant about is to guard your inner work. Don't proselytize. And sharing work ideas indiscriminately drains their force, he says, and breeds identification. This is, it's interesting, it's accurate, and it's also dangerous. What do you think the danger is? Come
Being
on.
a cult leader.
Yes. Thank you, Chris. The danger in the idea of not of hiding the work is that it can get really weird without outside feedback. And James, yes.
Uh, you just kind of said what I was going to say. Apart from deliberate inadvertent cultism, the work itself would suffer without feedback. Not just to avoiding cultism, but I don't know, not being adapted to the societies it occurs in, maybe. That's kind of a form of cultism, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Okay. Todd says, so much depends on the mix appropriate to what is being communicated and the ones involved. And that is God's own truth right there. Communicating pure math and communicating with dogs requires different mixes. And RM then asks how to balance the guarding of the work. Um, we talked about this a few talks back when we were talking about Rumi's Fihi Mafihi and his idea that you are best communicating your ideas at the level that a person can comprehend. If you talk over somebody's head, they aren't going to get it. And if you talk underneath their intellect, they're also not going to get it. So being able to measure your thoughts to your audience is important while still telling the absolute truth, but in a way that they understand. Does that make sense? And again, this is tricky. So Gurdjieff says, play a role outwardly. Don't identify inwardly. In relations, act as usual so as not to shock or manipulate others, while maintaining an inner state that is skillful, ethical, and communicative in life. Good advice. He also says and suggests that you aim for honesty of contact. Um, and this goes to his idea of external considering, to deal with what is rather than the noise in your head. And he was big on trying to figure out an impartial self-study about what enables or blocks real contact with people, and to put oneself in the other's place while staying present, which is part of his external considering. So, how would that relate to what we're talking about here? Don't everybody answer all at once. Brian, what do you think? You are smart, you know things.
Um, Not sure. Thinking on it.
Oh, look, Jefferson wants to say something. I could just tell.
Okay. Where are you, Jefferson? There you are.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm not up with the jargon of the Gurdjieffian that model, but to me, you were it connects because you were just describing. It seemed to be that you were just describing more like porousness in communication, like that there's an inward. There's not just You're not just dumping on other people. You're open as you give. There's a giving and receiving that happens in the process.
That's right. And I apologize for the jargon. Unfortunately, Gurdjieff developed more jargon than we need. Um, while saying that we got to watch out for jargon. It's funny how that works.
It also made me think of Milton Erickson and wondering if he was using all three centers in his work in certain ways.
I can tell you that he was. And that was a family trait. Erickson was, if you watch his videos, and you can find some of them on YouTube, he is so entrained with his clients that he's reproducing that person's world uh, as they experience it. He's reproducing it inside himself so that he can feel what they're feeling and hear what they're hearing and understand what they're saying, and then give them choices about what to do with it. One of my great favorite things about Erickson was his ability to utilize what he was given by his patients. So back when he was working at the state hospital in Illinois, he had a guy brought in who thought he was Jesus. And everybody's telling him, no, you're not Jesus. And he's, of course, going to double down on that because he knows he's Jesus. So Erickson walks up to him and says, I understand you're a carpenter. And he puts him to work in the wood shop. After about 3 months of that, the guy was completely normal and released and never came back and got married and had kids and lived happily ever after, because that's how Erickson likes to end his stories. So, yeah, Erickson was a master of this very thing. And we used to call this, in doing Ericksonian style work, being an uptime. Uptime is engaging all three centers and being present and not putting any of your shit on the other person. Hard to do, but when you start doing it, people change. But you're getting me off on my favorite subject, or one of them.
Yeah, just circling back. So sometimes I have to evict people from their basically from their rooms, and that can be a very emotional situation. And in using the three centers to do that, like you still are, you're feeling their pain in being evicted, and then using body language to try to relax them, but then also reasoning with them and simply explaining that you can't stay if you don't pay. And so for those higher intensity interactions, the three centers has been for me very useful.
Yeah, it can keep you out of a lot of trouble.
Yep.
So that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. So thanks for that. So the last of my quoting Gurdjieff here, he said that the work seeks a more exact language beyond fixing terms. The teaching points towards a mathematical structural precision and shared reference. So what would this look like? First of all, let's look at a listening protocol. Expand your attention. You want to keep a light sense of self, observing the eye while remaining quiet. Now, Gurdjieff made some generalizations here that I disagree with. He said, one must always face the seeker and seek direct contact. This maybe worked where he was from, but in other places that is going to create extreme anxiety and sometimes provoke aggression in the person who you are sitting and facing and looking directly at. So gauge your audience. And if you do that, you will be able to tell when it's appropriate to look directly in somebody's eyes and when it is appropriate to turn your head a little bit and just listen. Yes, James.
There's an extreme example of that, of acquaintance of mine who wrestled with paranoid delusions all her life, went to an eye-gazing workshop
Oh,
where
shit.
she sat and stared at the eyes of complete strangers, and to be blunt, she went off the deep end.
Yeah.
Months and months thereafter.
Yeah. In some places, it's a good way to get into a fight.
Yeah,
So,
most places, really. I think it's almost a universal aggression signal, is it not?
it can be. Yeah.
Hmm.
And no primate likes to be stared at in the eyes. So bear that in mind. What you want is to make contact in a way that is comfortable for both you and the other person, but mostly for the other person. Uh, but you want to be able to see them. It's important to be able to see more than just the face. You want to hear beyond words. Notice the tone, the posture, uh, the structure of breath. Where are they breathing from? You know, right now you can see me. You can see other people here, depending on how you have your Zoom set up. Where is everybody breathing from? Give you a hint. Watch the shoulders. Are the shoulders moving? If so, how? Are they moving like this? Are they moving like this? Are they moving like that? Is the chest moving? Or do you not see any of that moving and just notice that the nostrils might expand and contract? What does that tell you about where somebody is breathing from and what that means?
Well, if there's no shoulder action, if all this is comparatively still and relaxed, they're abdominally breathing there.
Yeah.
And of course the nose as well. That's a good indication that they're capable of doing that.
Hmm.
And looking at everyone here, I can't really see much happening, at least in the upper body, as far as I can tell across Zoom.
Yeah. You got to learn. You got to practice. And doing it on Zoom is harder than doing it in real life. But if you have head and shoulders, you can get a sense of how they're breathing. So the other thing that you want to do, according to G's model, is stop before you get tired. Stop before the speaker gets tired. Overlong efforts drain energy and lower quality of contact. Think about some time when you have been in a intense discussion with somebody, maybe an argument, and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going until you're both completely exhausted, and then you still try and go. there's a sweet spot where you can get work done, after which everything tends to start degenerating. So Gurdjieff said, pay attention to that sweet spot, and it's not a bad idea to do that. So Gurdjieff says, when it comes to speaking, be seen, then speak. Make an actual connection with the person to whom you are speaking. He recommends using exact, simple language, avoiding slang and vague phrasing. Offer to what is useful to everyone present. And he talks about three-centered contribution, think, feel, sense. Before you speak, pass your idea through three gates. What is the idea or observation? What is sincerely felt without justification or drama? And what you sense now, posture, breath, contact with the floor, any of that stuff. This shifts from reading with the head to using all three centers. And keep an inner thread of presence while you speak and listen. Is this making sense right now? Are you beginning to see what Gurdjieff's model was for this? Because it's important you understand it before I tear this all down and tell you why it's complete bullshit. Not really, but we will.
It's almost like I mean, if I'm understanding some of these things, in the right direction, it's like there's a valence of self-observation going on, but it's not only that, that there's a little bit of distance, there's a little bit of space.
Exactly right. Yes. You have hit it on the head. And your cat agrees with you. We're always excited when we see kitties. So play your role outwardly. Don't impose inner states. That's very important. Don't impose inner states, especially if you are in the uh, teaching or facilitating role. Inner states are for when you are sitting in front of your fireplace with a glass of warm, hot chocolate and enjoying the evening. It's not for when you're working with people. So you do what's needed publicly while keeping your inner presence. James, yes.
So don't get the lingo on that one. Imposing inner states. Don't impose inner states. What is it to impose an inner state?
James, I can tell that you are angry with me.
That'd be
Yeah,
that's you imposing something on me.
yeah, exactly.
Right, okay. Okay, so
Yeah, it's like one of the worst possible things you can do when you are doing the work.
it's don't impose inner states on the person you're
Yeah,
interacting. Right, okay. I get it.
yeah, that's poisonous. Anissa, asks or says, external considering. So you have to be objective in the way you see the person you are engaging with. Absolutely correct. Hard to do. Uh, and she says, so don't be in an echo chamber with the external world. Yep. So put yourself in the other person's place. Remember how you were when you were at their stage. And Gurdjieff says, and I don't parse this the way he means it. I think he said, wish to help with their future. And this kind of ends with guard your silence. What we say especially in a counseling, in a situation where you are working with a student, and most of you are going to be teachers of some sort if you're not already. If you're working with a student, you absolutely must guard their confidentiality. And they have to know that that's the case. They have to absolutely trust it and believe it. Otherwise, uh, you will create problems. And here's the other thing, that this is a place that a lot of people just totally screw up. You got to stop before the inner associations take over. If you feel the quality of the conversation, stop, or you notice people are getting sleepy, change the mode. Go on to a different thing. So I'm going to give you a little list I put together after going through a half dozen of Gurdjieff's own books. Uh, he recommended tailored contact, not a generic talk. He wants to see a person's face and to answer subjectively good for him. And that also means that there is no one answer for everybody. In a group like this, we try and find things that are useful to the majority of people who are listening. But when you are working with a real work group, uh, the work has to be tailored to the group. Otherwise, you get little benefit. Now, there's one thing that everybody gives lip service to, but most people hate, especially if you're a teacher, which is no belief. Verify what is being said. Accept nothing which you cannot prove. If somebody says something that is not falsifiable, drop it. You understand what that means?
Did you say that differently?
Okay. not falsifiable means you have to be able to prove it wrong if it's wrong. So if somebody says, I can levitate, the answer is, show me. Let me check for wires. Let me test for high density magnetic fields, whatever. And if you can't do that, that means it's not falsifiable. And if it's not falsifiable, it cannot be true in a certain objective sense. And that means, and this is hard for most teachers, you have to be willing to have your ideas challenged. Yes, Ian, challenge my ideas. Go ahead. I dare you.
I'm sorry. I'm not shy about doing that.
I know
But
that's one of my favorite things about you.
but while the principle of not being falsifiable says that it's not scientific,
Yes.
I think it's a little extreme. And the reason why I say that is that when it comes to personal experiences, and particularly experiences associated with let's say growing consciousness, that's probably not the right phrase, but it'll do. Um, uh, my personal belief is that I don't think there's a way to consider those to be falsifiable or not.
Yeah. And you know what that means? It means take everything said with a grain of salt.
Sure, we're certainly not going to dispute that.
Yeah. So
But
this is for instance, some great guru says, as a child, I had special powers. I could see the angels and they would come and talk to me. And they told me that I have a power that most people don't have, that actually nobody in this world has now. I am the only one that has it, and I'm supposed to use it only on those people who are worthy. That's the kind of thing that needs to be falsifiable. And it's not. There's no way that you can test for that. So in my book, you have to assume that what they're saying is a game rule or a fantasy. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think there's going to be some kind of line between those kinds of things and the things I was
Yeah,
talking about, but I can't say that I've thought through the issue deeply enough to be able to tackle it at this point.
yeah. For me, if you come to me and say, I just had a Satori experience. I spent the entire day being completely awake. I would go, oh, cool. And that would be fine. I would not dispute you on that. If you come to me and say, during that Satori experience, the spirit of Amitabha Buddha came to me and said, I should be the teacher in the nine-sided circle because I have had this special blessing. That's where I draw the line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does with specific examples, but in terms of finding a way of characterizing those things in a more general setting, that's where I
Yeah.
wouldn't know how to start doing that.
Start with your feelings. Does it feel off? Then
Sure. Yeah.
listen. Does it sound reasonable? Should you believe me if I tell you that I have special secret knowledge given to me by God Himself?
I don't think you do. But
I'm
that's a
pretty
personal
sure I don't
opinion.
either, but there will be people who will tell you that and insist that you believe it. And Chris says
He
Mushtaq
does.
is
He
psychic.
does. You better believe it.
Yeah. He was at the Amitabha Stupa yesterday. Cool.
I think he these special powers that you're talking about, you
It
know?
must be it. I have the special power to create coincidence.
Mhm.
Somebody saying something? James has his hand up. Tell us, James.
I just need some clarity before you said it's not falsifiable fantasy or it's a game rule. Do you mean by a game rule?
A game rule is something that you find all through human existence. All religion has game rules. If you want to be in the Christian religion, as it is practiced here in the United States by most people, you have to believe that Jesus died for your sins.
So we're talking trans-empirical articles of faith.
Basically, yeah, game
Okay.
rules.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to go down the board, you have to roll the dice. You can't go without rolling the dice. Of course, you can go without rolling the dice, but then the game is over.
Got to keep that game going infinitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth maybe adding for people who have not come across the concept of being falsifiable. If I remember correctly, it was Imre Lakatos who wrote the book on this and established it as a scientific principle. Uh, because I remember being taught this in like probably our first lecture in physics when I went to university.
Yeah. And it's important. If you're going pure science can't prove anything. They can't tell you that anything is true. They can only tell you if something is false or not yet proved false.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is why I love math, because math can tell you what's true. But I digress. Now, why is all of this important? Okay, here comes the heart of the talk. Todd says faith is believing things you can't prove. Math is proving things you don't have to believe. Kind of, yeah. I would say belief is believing things that you can't prove. Faith to me is something different, but that's for another conversation. So, all right, is everybody ready? Hold on to your seats. Here is the good stuff. We've talked long enough that anybody who is a lightweight will have already gone away. True communication is only possible between equals. You've probably heard me say this before. What does this mean? True communication is only possible between equals.
Because the people further up the scale, by and large, tend to only want to hear what they want to hear.
Yes.
It's,
And the people below them only want to tell them what they want to hear.
yeah, I believe there are exceptions to that rule, but they're pretty rare.
Yeah, I have yet to find an exception to the rule. When you find a place where it doesn't seem to be working, what you usually see is that the person who is apparently higher in the ranks treats the people around him like equals, or her around her like equals.
Yes, I agree with that.
James has a thought.
Didn't Robert Anton Wilson say that when someone's holding a gun on you, you're only going to tell them what they want to hear?
Yeah,
And a gun doesn't have to be a literal gun. It can be economic power. It can be legal, name it.
yep.
Something over you.
And in a lot of Gurdjieff schools, this was forgotten. And there's a difference here between I know more material than you do, James, but that doesn't make me better than you. It doesn't make me uh, somehow superior to you in any way. And the only way to use what I know for your benefit and my benefit is if we speak on a horizontal plane. It can't be like this. There is no communication on a vertical plane, no real communication.
If you want to extend the threat aspect a bit, um, coming back to the psychology of cults, people often identify the guru as being like the life principle without whose personal blessing they are in effect dead. So if the guru is withdrawing their approval, they feel physiologically under threat.
Yeah. And that's where we see this the most. We see this, a lot of Gurdjieff schools, I hate to say this, are basically cults where you cannot question the teacher. Same with most Sufi schools these days. You were told never question the sheikh. What the sheikh says is right. Which is why it took me so long to find a really good teacher who wouldn't try and pull that shit on me. As it turned out, he was mostly always right, but that was a coincidence. So, true communication is possible only between equals. This means equality of being, not equality of social rank. And for a lot of people, somebody, Jefferson was just asking, does equality here have to do with being or state? That's the one, that one can come into place of equalizing after being uh, out or off. Yeah, states come and go. This is the idea. So, for instance, Jefferson, I know more about Ericksonian hypnosis than you do, probably. I would give that a good bet. So, I can tell you things about that that you don't know. But that has nothing to do with our being. That's just means. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what are you like saying that it's like passing of information back and forth, like transactional versus um some kind of actual exchange of communication?
Yeah, transactional is a term I would want to stay away from because um, if the only reason I'm giving you information is because you're paying me for it in some way or another, it's not a real exchange. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. This is hard to come up with the words with. And it's been so uh, obscured. Uh, so to Gurdjieff, understanding is the resultant of knowledge and being together. And here's the thing that a teacher has to learn. If our beings are distant from each other, our inner coordinate systems don't match up, if I presume to teach you, it is my job to adjust my inner coordinate system to yours, not to expect you to take on mine. Does that make sense? I take this as being axiomatic. We boil that down into the simple phrase, if the student isn't learning, it's the teacher's fault, not the student's fault. So shared meanings are important. So every discipline has a technical language. The technical language needs to be kept as compact as possible, meaning mostly you should speak in plain English. There are some things that, you'll find Noor and I talking using Arabic terms because those are the technical language of our discipline. And we will be able to define them, but the definition is not as good as the term itself when you understand it. Yeah, Jefferson says, one of the schools I attended used the phrase, there are no difficult clients, only inflexible communicators. And that is God's own truth. So if we are communicating, ideally, both of us attune to each other. If one person has difficulty attuning to the other, then it behooves the one who is more flexible to create the circumstances where the person can receive the communication or what is being taught. So this becomes the idea of situational equality. You may be the Buddha, but if you cannot communicate your enlightenment from your lofty place, you are worthless, in my humble opinion, and in the opinion of most Sufis everywhere. So, situational equality is if you are the big high muckety muck, you have to be able to tune your communication to the people who you are talking to. Or as we say, where I come from, get down off your high horse. Come muck about in the mud with the rest of us. So the bottom line with this is that in the work, true communication is possible only between equals. Doesn't mean equal titles. It means sufficient equality of being, meanings, functions, and aim to generate three-centered understanding. Where that equality is absent, the task is to create it by defining terms, equalizing states, and aligning aim before talking most of the time, or at the initial phases of talking. And don't let yourself be culty. So that's the basic outline. What do you think this is going to look like in real life? How can you apply any of these things?
Well, that's context. I mean, I can think in a very formal sense if you're undertaking any of the counseling professions, what you've described here would be paramount.
Ideally, yes.
Um, in terms of day-to-day interaction, it negatives are coming to mind, like don't proselytize, don't turn every conversation into an egotistical attempt to propagandize to the other person. So much of our conversations are just automatic.
Yeah.
Um,
So
sometimes that's almost like a polite social thing. I ask someone how they are. I don't actually want to hear a detail of the day. I am fine. How are you? I am fine. That's just a current form of manners. And not everyone wants to have their inner soul exposed in every day-to-day interaction.
that's true. And that is something that you need to sense.
Hmm.
At the same time, if you're going to talk with somebody, ascertain their state. Okay, we have two probably very good comments here. RM says, I can give my own example. Motherhood. I actually sit on my knees at my child's level, and that has helped me in the past to communicate. Yes, attunement has helped. And Anissa says, in terms of everyday interactions, I find it hard to map this to small talks, as most of my day is being stuck in an elevator with my coworkers. So I guess that's when uh, gauging comes in. And James says, I've always suspected good mothering is a potent yoga. There's a reason that the
Concerned.
Prophet Muhammad said, paradise is at the feet of your mother. So you can allow yourself to be in a state where you can perceive the other people around you without having suppositions about them. This is baseline. And what would that be like if you were, say, hanging out in the elevator with your coworkers and you did not presuppose anything about them? You just observed quietly. You saw them, you felt them, you had the sensation of where they were in the world. What would that be like without saying anything about their state at all?
I'd have to stop internally considering.
Yes, and move entirely into what Gurdjieff called externally considering, or what we call uptime because it's easier to say.
Really thinking about the gather, refine, release triple right now in this talk, and how the information you're sharing is really helpful in the in all.
Yes, that's perfect. RM has observed in medicine. I always sit down when I talk or listen. I always observe how my patient is talking and using body language, which is really good. RM, do you know the one factor that will tell you whether or not a patient is likely to sue you for malpractice?
Yes, it's communication.
Yeah, more than communication, it is rapport. If you
Yeah.
have good rapport with your patient, they are much less likely to get angry with you and decide that they're going to sue you because the sutures don't look as good as they want them to. And this is true across the board. And we have lots and lots of data that says that this is definitely the case. So sitting with your patient, listening to them, breathing with them, speaking in the same predicates, all of this stuff, it creates the rapport that you need with your patients. And your patients will get better, easier if you have good rapport with them. I mean, think about the patient who doesn't like you and you say, I want you to get better. And they go, no, I'm going to stay sick just to spite you.
Hmm.
Versus the ones who go, oh, what a good idea. Thanks, doc. I think I will. I'm being slightly facetious, but only slightly. Todd.
Oh, I was thinking of something that happened many years ago where I had had a bad effect from an understandable effect, but the only way to get the hospital to attempt to establish rapport rather than just say you're imagining your condition or it never happens was to threaten to sue them, and that got them to sit down and take the problem seriously and avoided a lawsuit.
Yep.
It had to work it should have worked the first way, but it had to be kind of
Yeah. And that
worked
tells me that the
backwards.
doctor didn't have good rapport with you because he wasn't listening to you.
Yeah, it was, and well, not the doctor, but the hospital administration.
Yeah. Those guys don't have rapport with anybody.
But the ombudsman was a nurse rather than an administrator and understood rapport and its importance. So it was a um, sometimes communication has to be,
Yeah. Sometimes it does.
yeah. It also made me think that effective interrogation does not involve imposing states on people, but developing rapport with the person whom the
Yeah.
interrogator is trying to interrogate.
There's been whole books written on that by FBI and CIA interrogators who will tell you what really works and what doesn't. And they're worth studying. But anyway, it's getting late.
Yeah.
So, last thoughts. First thoughts. Anybody we haven't heard from? Anybody who we would like to hear from? Kevin, what do you think?
distracted. My dog is clamoring for attention over here, so maybe I have to get down on her level and
Yeah,
build some
or bring her
rapport
up
with her.
to yours so we can all enjoy
Yeah,
her.
she's very she's very resistant to the idea.
Too bad.
In any case, I just really sort of stirring in the soup, as it were, with all of the um considerations and using the three-bodied model as sort of a map or even I hesitate to use diagnostic tool, but a something of a map to ascertain more about oneself and about their interlocutors. I enjoy the example of the elevator, the coworkers in the elevator. It often feels like most of my interactions is at some level that, you know, there. But if you could really briefly sort of explain the difference between inner considering and external considering, that would be really
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay. Internal considering is basically all the noise that goes on in your head, where you are talking about what is going on to yourself. You're thinking about other things. You're in the future. You're in the past. You are in your inner life, and it tends to be completely mechanical. External considering is having the focus be on the other person so that you can actually experience them or on the events of the world. And it means you have to turn off the noise in your head. Is that kind of clear?
That's very clear, very useful.
Good. Yeah, we have better words for that, but since this talk is based on Gurdjieff's ideas tonight, I wanted to always use his terms, as weird as they are sometimes. All right, folks, I'm going to switch us over to Brady Bunch mode. And there we all are. Thank you all for coming and hanging out with me. Hopefully, Noor will be with us next week. Um, Fingers crossed. It'll be much more fun with her here. And so let's wave to everybody and say good night.